Hi and welcome to another video from the CTAD Clinic. My name is Dr. Mike Lloyd and I'm the Clinic Director. In this video we're going to be answering a question from one of our subscribers, which is why is it that different parts react in different ways when they're triggered? And this could be biological or it could be sort of in a behavioural response or anything really. And it's a really good question because it comes to the heart often of what structural dissociation theory considers to be about action systems. So in this video, I'm going to sort of quickly give an overview with an example to try and help understand why it is that when there's a trigger, different parts may react in different ways because it's all about the context of that trigger. And the thing here is that we have to understand that alters or parts or others within the dissociative identity disorder system, or DID, have been sort of developed in response to specific traumas that often occur over a period of time. So they develop these sort of behavioural response systems, which are like sequenced actions that take place. Now some parts are actually sort of grow beyond this and others sort of remain confined by that. It doesn't really make a lot of difference to this because in the context of a trigger, the system, the internal world believes that there's a threat and therefore it enacts a series of action systems. Now the difficulty is that the threat originally taking place when trauma was being experienced was real threat, and the trigger is often implied threat, i.e. the person or system might think that a threat is taking place when actually it isn't. It seems to be about to take place but it actually isn't. So the origins of action systems are within threatening, traumatic environments, and triggers usually take place within safe environments where the system is being tricked into believing that threat is going to take place. So what happens is the internal world then generates these series of action systems in order to try and mediate the threat as it believes it's going to take place. So in order to explain this, I'll give an example. So let's imagine that you're out shopping, you're in a busy supermarket and you're just trying to get the weekly shop done or daily shop or whatever it is that you're doing. And you walk around one of the corners of the aisles and there in the aisle you see somebody who reminds you of a person who was present within your traumatic experiences. So that's a clear trigger. You believe that, let's say, one of the abusers from the past may be present again, or a bully or somebody who was hostile to you is there. You believe it's there. They may look fairly similar, have some sort of, recognition, and therefore the trigger applies. So the internal threat system then just goes, we know that there's a threat, but we were in a very safe environment, so we're completely unprepared for this. We've got no real context or knowledge or understanding what's taking place, so therefore the system kind of goes through the possible action sequence that can take place. So for example, that might engage in a flight part, so that get out of trouble, get away as fast as you can do, and you kind of end up sort of switching or dissociating out, dumping the shopping and running out of the supermarket as fast as you can do. There may be another part which actually wants to do like a fawn response and go towards the person that's been seen in order to try and pacify the possibility of any threat by, just submitting to that person. There might be a fight part who takes place, who wants to engage with that person, go towards them and behave in an aggressive way in order to try and protect the system by guarding up and looking all frightening. And then there might be a part which just wants to hide, which just wants to sort of hunker down and get behind a cabinet, slink away and hide, and that will be the freeze part. So if we just think that we've got like freeze, fight, flight, and fawn responses are just 4 of a series of actions that can take place. Any one of those then is being calibrated by the brain to go which one of these is the best one. So it might just kind of go through all of these and do a bit of this and a bit of that and be quite chaotic. So the person is sort of partly wanting to run, partly wanting to fight, partly wanting to hide away. All of these things are taking place until there's some sort of dominant control is achieved, either through a realization that that person was actually not a threat whatsoever, in which case then everything can kind of calm and then it's up to the individual as to whether they're actually going to finish the shopping or not, or whichever one of those 4 systems dominates and takes place. It's likely to be ones that are going to be as safe as possible, which might be the one to get as far away as possible. And then we've got amnesia that can develop. So there could be the additional layers of dissociation. So any one of those systems can take place, any one of those action systems can be acted on, and there may be no memory for it afterwards, which makes things very confusing indeed. So if we just break down the response, any particular threat has got a degree of different types of action systems that it can incorporate in terms of protecting around that trauma, and any one of those could be brought into play given a trigger. But the nature of the trigger is that it's not an actual threat, because that's the general, daily life of things. Where there is actual threat, it's completely different, and the system usually works quite differently. We're talking about the implied threat of a trigger, in which case it kind of runs through all the different responses in order to try and work out which the best one will be, and that can be very chaotic and very confusing. So that's just one explanation for why, in very general terms, different parts might have very, very different reactions, because they're geared up to do different things, but they all might swoop in on a trigger that is confusing to the system. Where there are very, very specific different things, that's a bit more of a therapy response in terms of trying to break down and reduce the different components and make sense. But that will be something that will be done on an individual patient basis within therapy. That's not what I'm talking about here. Just some very general terms to help get this sense across that any trigger can lead to very, very different responses depending on context, depending on the nature of traumatic experience early in childhood, and it can be very chaotic and very confusing until it learns how to do it right. I hope that's answered the question. Thank you ever so much. It's a really wonderful comment to put in, and it generates a lot of thought and a lot of understanding about how this dissociation works within DID. Obviously within OSDD as well, there can be all of these different influences taking place, and there may be some partial action systems taking place, but largely we see this kind of outward behavioral response taking place within DID. So that's where we're looking in this video. So I hope that's been helpful. As always, like, subscribe, share, do all the usual things, leave some comments below. That's always great, because we do listen to these comments, and some of these videos are generated specifically around the comments that you guys give us. So thank you very, very much for that. Keep them coming, and we'll produce another video as and when we can. And between now and then, please do take great care.